July 25th, 1944, Normandy, France. The atmosphere is heavy, sticky, and eerily calm. If you just glance at the hedgerows stretching west of St. Lay, they look like ordinary, peaceful farmland. These massive walls made of dirt and ancient roots, some standing for hundreds of years, cut through the French countryside like a natural labyrinth that seems almost tranquil. But Lieutenant General Fritz Bayerlein? He sees right through this illusion. From his reinforced command post, basically a fortified farmhouse buried under layers of dirt and timber, Bayerlein knows exactly what these hedgerows really mean. They're a natural fortress. They've brought the world's strongest military to a standstill for a month and a half. And right now, Bayerlein is feeling something he's carried with him for months. A calm, rock-solid confidence in his superiority. Then, at exactly 9:38 in the morning, Bayerlein picks up a noise that has no place on any battlefield he's ever known. It's not the screaming dive of fighter planes attacking his armor. This is something completely different. A low, pulsing, mechanical roar that seems to surround him from every direction, coming from below his feet, from right next to him, from the sky itself. It sounds like a massive industrial factory running at full speed. Now, Fritz Bayerlein isn't just any tank officer. He commands the Panzer Lehr Division, literally the teacher's division. This unit was built with one specific goal: to educate others. It wasn't assembled from regular combat troops. Instead, it was formed from the absolute best instructors in the Wehrmacht, men who spent years at the elite Panzer School, training the next wave of German officers in the science of armored combat. Every single captain, every sergeant, every corporal in this division has spent months or even years teaching other soldiers the art of war. Bayerlein himself is legendary, a veteran who fought in North Africa directly under Rommel, commanding tanks across endless desert terrain and mastering mechanized warfare at the highest possible level. He's fought Americans before. He's gone up against their tanks, their big guns, their tactics, and he's lived to tell the tale. The Panzer Lehr isn't just an elite unit. It's elite in a way most military formations could never dream of becoming. Every single man in this division has received more advanced tactical education than an entire American infantry company put together. They understand armor angles, the geometric principles of how a tank's sloped surface can deflect incoming shells. They know how to analyze ground, how to use reverse slope tactics so enemy artillery can't get a beat on them. They grasp the complex ballet of combined arms operations, infantry protecting tanks, tanks covering anti-tank positions, everything moving together in perfect harmony. Your average American soldier, he's been pulled from his farm back home or his factory job, given 3 months of basic training at some camp in Georgia or Texas, then shipped across the ocean. Sure, these American boys are brave, they've got guts, but what they're missing is the training. They don't have the deep understanding of how to fight against an opponent who actually knows what they're redoing. Over the past month, Bayerlein has watched the Americans throw themselves against the bocage and bleed out. The American First Army has taken 40,000 casualties, that's 40,000 men, and they've barely pushed forward 7 miles. They restuck in what Germans call a sniper S-war, fighting for every inch of ground. A brutal war of attrition that plays perfectly into Germany's tactical strengths. The Americans are losing their patience. Bayerlein can hear it in their radio chatter. That same frustration repeating endlessly. The landscape defeats them. The German defenders stop them cold. The brutal chess match of hedgerow combat crushes their morale. Meanwhile, Bayerlein's division has dug in with trademark German precision and efficiency. His tanks are positioned using reverse slope defense hidden in the shadows behind the hedgerows, where American artillery observers have zero chance of spotting them. His infantry soldiers are buried in carefully constructed fighting holes with overlapping firing lanes, calculated down to the exact meter. His anti-tank guns sit concealed in carefully planned kill zone spots where American tank crews won't and see them until it's already over, until the muzzle flash appears and the shell is already in flight. Bayerlein is absolutely convinced he has the Americans cornered. He studies his map at 9:30 a.m., just 8 short minutes before his entire world changes forever. His defensive positions are flawless. The battle lines are set, the firing zones are ready. He says, expecting another day of small American probing attacks infantry, attempting to push through the hedgerows and getting shredded by his machine guns. Another day of holding strong. Another day proving German excellence over American raw force and inferior strategy. The last thing he expects is Armageddon. Bayerlein walks outside his bunker. The noise keeps getting louder and louder. He's experienced bomber attacks before. He's witnessed bombing campaigns in North Africa. He's survived airstrikes, but this is nothing like that. This isn't a tactical airstrike supporting ground forces. This isn't just a raid. This is industrial-scale destruction. He lifts his eyes toward the north, and instantly his confidence turns to ice-cold terror. The sky has disappeared. What he sees instead is a solid ceiling made of aluminum aircraft. Hundreds upon hundreds of bombers packed into formations so incredibly dense they literally block out the sunlight. Thousands and thousands of tons of aircraft, filling every inch of sky like a conveyor belt of death streaming in from the north wave after wave after wave, formation stacked on formation. The mighty 8th Air Force, the most devastating air power ever assembled in human history, is bringing its entire fleet of strategic bombers. Not just a few fighters, not a handful of fighter bombers hunting specific targets. 1,500 four-engine heavy strategic bombers, B-17 flying fortresses, B-24 Liberators. These are machines specifically built to obliterate entire cities like Berlin and Hamburg. Aircraft designed to flatten entire city blocks in one bombing run. And right now, they're all concentrated over this single patch of French farmland where Bayerlein's division is dug in. General Omar Bradley has made a decision to completely abandon conventional tactical warfare. If he can't outmaneuver the German army in this hedgerow nightmare, if he can't win through smarter tactics and better discipline, he's simply going to use America's massive industrial power to erase the entire grid square from existence. He's going to weaponize the earth itself. Bayerlein later wrote in his personal memoirs about what flooded through him in that single moment. I looked toward the sky and witnessed the apocalypse coming straight at us. The bombers arrived like products on an assembly line. This was the end. In that one instant, the entire course of the war shifts. Not because the Americans are more skilled tactically, not because Bayerlein screwed up somewhere, but because he is about to learn a brutal truth that the German high command has been desperately ignoring for years. Bravery isn't enough anymore. Tactical genius isn't enough anymore. Even the finest training the Wehrmacht can provide isn't enough anymore. What's about to unfold isn't warfare in any traditional meaning of the word. It's industrial annihilation. To truly grasp the sheer scale of what Bayerlein is watching right now, you need to understand the math behind modern industrial warfare. The operation has the code name Cobra. The strategy is brutally straightforward. American infantry has pulled back exactly 1,200 yards, carefully measured with precision surveying tools. Double-checked and confirmed to establish what they're calling a safety buffer zone. Into the rectangular section of French countryside in front of them, the United States Army is about to dump 4,000 tons of high explosives in just 60 minutes. 4,000 tons. Let that number sink in for a moment. The complete explosive payload equals the entire weight of Bayerlein's whole Panzer Lehr Division, every single tank, every gun, every truck, every round of ammunition they possess. Picture the weight of an entire division, thousands of vehicles, all the equipment thousands of soldiers carry. Now imagine that exact weight converted entirely into explosive firepower dropping from the sky. And it's all falling in just 1 hour. Bayerlein's Panzer Lehr Division is spread across roughly 3 miles of front line. 3 miles. They about to receive more explosive tonnage than everything that fell on all of Britain during the entire London Blitz. 3 years' worth of bombing, compressed and condensed into 60 minutes, all within 1 single hour. Not stretched over months. Not even spread across weeks. 60 minutes. This isn't combat. This is an industrial demolition operation. And the Panzer Lehr Division is positioned right in the dead center of Ground Zero. Bayerlein experiences his first moment of genuine terror. Not the calculated worry of a commander weighing his tactical options. Not the professional stress of a soldier getting ready for combat, but raw, primal, animalistic fear of a human being who realizes in this moment that he is about to witness industrial-scale slaughter on a level his brain was unbuilt to process, a scale that goes beyond anything human imagination can handle. At 9:40 a.m., just 2 minutes after, Bayerlein spots the bomber stream. The lead bombardiers drop their payloads. It's called carpet bombing for a very specific reason. The bombs don't drop as individual weapons. They don't fall one at a time, giving defenders any chance to react or run or organize. They fall in massive sheets. They pour down like torrential rain. They cascade like products rolling off a factory assembly line. Constant, merciless, and completely uncaring about human life. The fundamental physics of the battlefield transform instantly. When that first wave strikes the ground, the shock wave is so violent it creates an actual vacuum. Trees that have stood for 500 years are stripped completely bare in an instant. Not broken off. Not snapped, but stripped clean like some factory machine peeled away every single leaf and branch in one mechanical motion. Hedgerows that have shaped the French landscape for centuries are vaporized. They simply stop existing. The earth itself transforms into a weapon. The sound goes beyond what human ears can even register. It's not sound anymore. It's a pressure wave. An actual physical force that bursts eardrums and collapses lungs even if not a single piece of shrapnel touches a human body, just from the shockwave. Just from the pressure of the air itself, moving at speeds that can kill. Inside the German bunkers, the reinforced earth walls start shaking. Then they start shifting. Then they start turning liquid under the unimaginable force being applied from above. Every light goes dark immediately. The telephone cables, those carefully installed underground phone lines, connecting the command post to every unit, all go dead. Radio operators screaming into their headsets hear nothing but static. Pure static mixed with the sound of a world being pulverized overhead. The nervous system of the Panzer Lehr has been completely severed. Command and control have vanished. Strategy no longer exists. Tactics no longer matter. There's only one thing left: survival, but the bombing doesn't stop. It just keeps going. And going and going, for a full 60 minutes. Try to picture yourself sitting in a pitch-black hole while the world above you gets systematically destroyed. Second by second for an entire hour, minute 1 passes. Minute 2, minute 3, you have no idea when it's going to end. You have no clue if it will ever end. You can't know if the earth above you will eventually cave in and bury you alive. A 50-ton Panther tank buried in forward positions becomes a toy when the ground beneath it turns to liquid. The armor plating that would normally stop an American 75mm anti-tank shell becomes completely meaningless, totally irrelevant. The tank tips over on its side. Its crew suffocates in complete darkness as dirt pours down through the crew compartment like sand through an hourglass. This happens again, and again, and again, all across the 3-mile front line. Tank after tank. Gun after gun, man after man. The numbers are what make industrial warfare so absolutely horrifying to anyone who truly understands them. 1,500 bombers. Each B-17 carries roughly 8,000 pounds of high explosives. That equals 12 million pounds of TNT, 4,000 tons. Dropped within 1 hour. To put this in real perspective, Bayerlein's entire Panzer Lehr Division with all its tanks, all its guns, all its ammunition and supplies and vehicles and fuel combined weighs less than half the total tonnage of explosives being dropped on their positions right now. The weight of an entire elite division converted purely into explosive tonnage raining from the sky. American industrial capacity has finally entered this war in a way that German military thinking simply can't unwrap its head around. This isn't a battle. This is mass production. This is what happens when a country with unlimited industrial resources, unlimited fuel, unlimited raw materials, unlimited workforce decides to solve a tactical problem using factory assembly line methods. The Germans invented blitzkrieg warfare. They invented combined arms combat. They invented the modern tank battle. They literally wrote the manual on tactical excellence. They are absolute masters of maneuver warfare. German officers study their own doctrine in every single military academy across Europe, but they never invented warfare on an industrial scale. Bayerlein's pre-war training never prepared him for anything like this, because in pre-war military theory, in all the calculations made by German military planners back in the 1930s, no nation on Earth possessed the capacity to generate this level of firepower. It was literally beyond what German military minds could imagine. It exceeded their calculations, their expectations, their entire understanding of what was physically possible. The scale of American production isn't just bigger. It exists in a completely different category. It operates in an entirely different dimension. Germany, when running at absolute maximum capacity, manages to produce roughly 1,500 fighter aircraft per month, about 1,200 Bf-109s combined, with another 300 to 400 Fw-190s. These are their primary fighters. Even with every German factory running at full capacity, with all resources diverted to aircraft production, they can build about 1,500 fighters monthly. But America? America cranks out over 2,000 fighters every single month, and that's not even counting bombers. That's not counting transport planes. That's purely fighters. It's a 3-to-1 advantage. And by mid-1944, that advantage has become mathematically impossible to overcome. At 11 a.m., after a full hour of bombardment, the engine noise finally fades away. A bizarre, ringing silence settles over St. Lay. Not actual peace. Not real quiet, but the deafening silence that comes from shell shock and concussion and a reality that no longer makes any sense. A silence so complete it feels like it has physical weight. Bayerlein crawls out of his shelter. He's covered head to toe in thick gray dust. He looks like a walking ghost, like someone who's been dug out of an ancient grave. His ears are ringing with a high-pitched screaming sound that might never go away. He'll carry that ringing sound for the rest of his natural life. He staggers toward his staff car, desperate to regain control over his division. He needs to re-establish command. He needs to organize a counterattack. He needs to do something, anything, to restore order and military discipline. He attempts to drive forward to inspect his defensive lines. He can't do it. The roads have disappeared, not just damaged, not just filled with craters, they're completely gone. The actual ground where the roads existed has been vaporized and rearranged into a landscape that looks like an alien planet. What he discovers is a graveyard. The Panzer Lehr's 60-ton Panther tanks are buried up to their turrets in loose, churned soil. Their crews suffocated inside them. No bullet wounds, no shrapnel injuries. Just death by suffocation in the darkness, while the earth moved beneath them like a massive earthquake. Anti-tank guns are twisted and mangled into unrecognizable pieces of scrap. Ammunition trucks are flipped over and burned to husks. But the most disturbing discovery is the survivors. He finds men wandering without purpose through the crater-filled moonscape. Some have blood running from their ears. Some are trying to talk, but nothing comes out of their mouths. They're shell-shocked and dazed, as Bayerlein will later document in official reports. These aren't soldiers who've been beaten in combat. These are men who've been processed through a machine. They've been fed through an industrial system and emerged on the other side as something less than human. The elite veterans of the Panzer Lehr men chosen specifically, because they were the best training instructors the Wehrmacht could offer, are now standing with vacant eyes, staring at nothing. They don't salute. They don't obey orders. They don't even respond to their own names. They've been broken not by enemy courage or determination, but by raw physics and cold mathematics, by the laws of physics and the mathematics of industrial power. Bayerlein transmits a message to Field Marshal Kluge. It becomes one of the most famous military communications of the entire Second World War. Every single word carries the weight of total, complete realization. My division is annihilated. The men are shell-shocked. The equipment is buried. I command nothing. At 11:30 a.m., just 30 minutes after the bombing ends, American tanks fire up their engines. The U.S. First Army begins advancing forward. Bayerlein has spent weeks preparing for exactly this moment. He's built defensive positions. He's positioned anti-tank weapons. He's created overlapping fields of fire specifically designed to turn advancing American tanks into burning wrecks. The Americans are bracing for a wall of anti-tank fire. They're expecting the fierce, disciplined resistance they faced for 6 solid weeks in the Bocage countryside. Instead, they find absolutely nothing. There's no organized resistance because there's no communication network. There's no command structure anymore. There's no functioning military organization left on the German side whatsoever. Operation Cobra has worked exactly as planned. The stalemate is shattered. The Americans drive straight through the gap where the Panzer Lehr used to exist. They flood into Brittany and then wheel east toward Paris. The German front line in Normandy doesn't just pull back, it completely collapses. It falls apart like a building that just lost its foundation. General Fritz Bayerlein manages to escape with just a handful of his staff officers, but his elite division gets left behind in the craters surrounding St. Lay. The Panzer Lehr Division, formed from the Wehrmacht's absolute best training instructors, has been reduced to scattered survivors wandering through an apocalyptic moonscape. Operation Cobra proved a terrifying new reality about modern warfare. Personal courage has become obsolete. Tactical brilliance has become obsolete. The best training the German army can provide has become obsolete. When you're refacing an enemy who can turn a section of Earth into dust using an industrial assembly line of bombers, when you're up against a nation that can deploy 1,500 heavy bombers in a single operation, when you're refighting a military-industrial complex that produces more tanks in 30 days than you can build in 12 months, individual valor becomes meaningless. Standing in the dust of his destroyed army, Bayerlein understood a fundamental truth that would shape the rest of the war and haunt the rest of his life. The war was already lost. Not because the Americans were superior soldiers. Bayerlein knew the truth better than that. His men represented the elite of the Wehrmacht. But the Americans had transformed warfare into an engineering problem. And industrial-scale engineering projects don't care about bravery. They don't care about tactical skill. They don't care about training or discipline or military tradition. They only care about production numbers and horsepower and tonnage delivered. The project was completed, and Germany lost the war the exact moment Omar Bradley decided to solve a tactical battlefield problem with an industrial factory solution. Thanks for watching. If this piece of history hit you hard, please smash that like button and subscribe to Tales of Valor for more forgotten World War II stories about how industrial power crushed individual heroism. Drop a comment below telling us where you rewatching from and what World War II stories you want to hear next. Your likes, comments, and subscriptions help us keep bringing these powerful stories of courage and the harsh lessons they teach to everyone who wants to truly understand modern warfare.